Alright, this is part 2 of this current video. This STI is here. We're going to go ahead and pull the engine out, and I'll show you the damage we've seen so far. I was going to pull the intake manifold off, but I decided just the alternator to start with, and I'm glad I did. Whew. It's not a very good looking hole. I gotta get this engine out now. So when I pull a Subaru engine, not always, but usually this is how I kind of start. And if you're new to the channel, then at least I'll show you what I like to start with. I lift the car up, jack stands, and I almost always drain the coolant out of the rad and then pull the rad out. There's two the plugins for the fans right there, and right there you need to remove before the rad comes out. You have the lower hose and the upper hose, and then the two off the side that go to the turbo coolant reservoir. And lately, at least, I've been doing this where I take the power steering pump off, just 12 there, 12 there, and 12 there. These two are like this, and the power steering pump I lay to the side. And then if this is full, I'll pull this off. If not, then I'll just leave it on. And then, of course, this is one of the hooks for pulling the engine out right there. And once the rad is out, you have a lot of more room to work in here. This one, I'm going to be swapping this intake and exhaust onto a different block. So I might actually pull the intake and exhaust off in car, just so that they're not in the way and that I can get them ready to go on the next block. But normally I just pull the intercooler next, downpipe off all the bell housing bolts. This is an STI. So it's going to have the little pin in the side of the transmission. It should be a 10mm Allen. Pull the little plug out, and then 10 from the cover is what I usually use, the timing cover. And I just kind of thread in and then pull it out and wiggle the clutch fork to get it out. This one has an aero separator. So you've got coolant lines from the coolant expansion to the turbo coolant reservoir to the aero separator. And then from the aero separator to the turbo and back to the block. And this has a few other small things, fuel lines, that kind of stuff that we'll undo, but mostly it's stock engine-wise, so it's not super complex. It's not like a rotated setup where you have a lot more things in the way. Anyways, from here, you have a couple sensors over here. I believe it's two engine connectors, and then two over here as well. And then the sides are basically done, and then you just work on the back side and then the motor mounts. Kind of forgot this car had an external wastegate, or well, I guess not had, has. So I got to pull that off, probably. So my next step is going to be going into the bottom, taking the two bottom downpipe to catback adapter bolts off, and the hanger bolt, and then lower this downpipe enough. And my goal is to get the engine to come out with the external wastegate attached, but we'll see if it works. I also kind of forgot he's got a cylinder for a coolant mod down here, but I believe I just take that clamp off right there, and the rest of it stays with the engine. Should be good to go there. But yeah, downpipe's coming, and I've got this aero separator line here to the valve cover left. And then up top, it's just gonna just be bell housing bolts, and then the motor mounts. I don't think that this block's been taken out for like probably 100,000 miles at least. So all the block bolts were pretty damn tight. I don't think that this block has been taken apart in about 100,000 miles. All the block bolts too, like the bell housing bolts were all really tight. How to get the external wastegate off? To get to two of them, I'm just chilling right here right now. But she's downpipe's down there. It's about to separate. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it and see if it'll just move. Sometimes I get lucky. See if I grab this. Yep, look at that. Opened up. So we're just gonna get the clutch pin out. It's right there. And pop the actual pin out of the clutch fork. Take the spring off so that I don't want to lose it. And then motor mounts. I think she's ready to come out. In order to ease my work today, I pulled the intake manifold off in car, and then I'm going to take the exhaust off. That way the other engine, I can lift it up, take the exhaust off it, bolt this one directly on, drop it down, put this intake directly on it. And I think it should save me some time as far as swapping the blocks back and forth with the engine hoist. We got the intake manifolds off. How she looks on top right now. Not the worst I've ever seen for sure, but obviously a nasty hole. So turbo looks gorgeous. I pulled the evap line off, and a bunch of these little charcoal little beads came out. But at least headers next, and then I'm gonna get ready to pull the engine out. Right, headers are off, so now I'm gonna figure out how to get this mess cleaned up. Get the whole 6-speed package, my lift, or my jack, and intake and everything else out of the way. Get that engine up in the air, get those headers off, possibly get these new ones on. Put that to the side and get this lift out here so I can get that engine out. Let's see if anything comes out while I drain the oil real quick. as far as metal. I think it's fresh oil, unfortunately, but pretty black, but nothing big at least. Can't find my tripod, so I'm gonna just go ahead and pull this motor out. You get the gist of it. You've seen me do it a couple times on this channel. Motor's about to come out. Here she is right now. And now she's out. Clutch setup looks good. Oh my gosh. That throw bearing, I'm surprised it was working. That's very impressive. Turbo looks good still. Glad this engine's out. All right, so this is the old engine. I gotta still pull off, let's see here. That will fill, clutch stuff, the turbo. On this one, this is the new motor. All right, just swapped over the oil fill tube right there. And the aero separator oil lines are on now. That one's down. This one still needs to be mounted. New crank breather hose on. And then I swapped over the coolant temp sensor. It's different for the different wiring harnesses. I just got a new rear main seal in here. That's what's left of the oil return line for the turbo. It just fell apart as coming out, unfortunately. But the new turbo looks gorgeous. I'll go ahead and probably install this in just a minute. Figure out if I'm gonna run these new lines right here, or if I'm just gonna use these factory lines like this. Because there's already a metal line over there. And then AC compressor over and clutch and stuff next. And then put this all back on and put the turbo on. Clutch is definitely worn. It's an ACT. It's got a lot of life left, but it's definitely worn. It's been used for sure. Same with this flywheel. He didn't have any slipping, so I think we're gonna put it back together. But the pilot bearing's about gone. There's your pilot bearing. Not too bad there, but just had some hard days. And there's his old rear main. This cover here was leaking. Rear main was leaking. Leaking pretty good, nice and sparkly back here. I just put a new pilot bearing in the inside of there, and then I just torqued all the bolts down for this flywheel. Gonna go ahead and put the clutch brush plate on. Need to put the turbo on. We're using a new oil line, so we're gonna use the factory line that I had on this car. So it's gonna go from there across down to here. All right, I got the clutch on this motor, and then when I was going to start thinking about putting this motor in the car, I realized the cylinder 4 cooling mod wasn't on, and I didn't have an Allen for it, so I just went and got one of those, and the cylinder 4 cooling mod is on now. Clutch is on, nice and centered. Cylinder 4 cooling mod's on. I'm gonna have to clean these. I'm gonna probably install intake actually off the car. I still gotta install that oil line that goes right here, and then get ready to drop this in the car. Brand new throat bearing is installed, looking nice and shiny. Got the pin clutch hole plug in. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that out in a moment. Getting this engine ready. 6 speeds out the way. Hopefully I can get this thing in tonight. Kind of hard to show this on camera, but brand new thermostat's in. Old one's just chilling there. We got this new Killer B high flow. It's gonna go right on there. Working on motor mounts right now. These are the old ones he had on the car. Decently collapsed, but not the worst. The new one I just installed right here with a new plate. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the other side off of the bottom of this head, and then go ahead and install the new one that's just chilling right there. This old driver's side motor mount was squishing out. It was disgusting. Brand new one's right there. And I'm gonna go ahead and drop this motor in the car and get it in there at least for tonight so I can complete it tomorrow. Try to remember when you drop a new motor in, if it's a different motor than stock, make sure you pop the dowels out of either the tranny or the engine. Sometimes they get stuck in one or the other. When you go put the engine back in together, you can't figure out why it won't come together because of the dowels. This one had 2 and I just knocked both of them out. So the engine still has them, just not the tranny. So now I'm gonna go ahead and drop this motor in. The dowels were right there and right there, and then now they're out. Can't record because it's too dark to look good on camera, but she's at least sitting here with the studs started. There we go, got the motor in. It was not easy. I didn't have the headers on, so I didn't have anything to push on. But she's in, all the bolts are tight except for the starter. I gotta get the clutch fork to push all the way back to pop in. That's the first thing I do on these 02 to 05 WRX and then 05 plus STIs because they have the pull style clutch throw bearing. So she's in, motor mounts I think sunk. Start putting it all back together. This is gonna be a little bit of a process. I'm gonna get as much done tonight as I can. But it's already 10 and I'm ready to take a shower and go to bed. And look at there, we got that stuck against there. We finally got it pushed back far enough it popped in. So now the clutch stuff is good. I gotta make sure that 10mm Allen is tight. So see if I can get more done tonight. Tight, there we go. Last bell housing bolt I'm about to put back in. Just kidding. Right in the garbage. Nice fresh bottom solder bolt. And the bell housing bolts will be done. Pretty sick. Well, it's like 11 p.m. You can see they got the headers on down there, motor mounts are in, pitch stops in. I'm gonna call it a night. Tired, but at least she's just missing the oil line for here, the turbo, intercooler, and intake manifold. Morning and welcome to the last day of this Subaru put together build, hopefully. This is my legacy oil banjo bolt, one of them at least. And I can see very clearly there's a filter in there. There's 0 metal shavings, which is awesome to see. I'm gonna get rid of the filter anyhow. Just installed the oil line right there that goes to the back. I'm gonna go ahead and put new crush washers on there and the back, and then get the up pipe on in the turbo. Work on getting the intakes cleaned on this block, and then the intake manifold on, and then she's getting close to being ready to drive. The oil line is on. Both banjo bolts are tight with new crush washers. I gotta work on getting this up pipe on. When it comes to up pipes, there are 2 brackets that come with these cars in the factory. One is really annoying, especially if you have an oil line issue, the return. So I put the top one on, it holds it really still. This one didn't have one, so I just installed one. So you can see it right here, right there. You got 1 bolt and then a stud with a nut on it. Now the up pipe's nice and secure. We'll go ahead and probably drop the turbo on next, make sure the oil line looks good for the return. And then once that's done, there's some boxes, freshly rebuilt turbo. This thing looks crazy good. Nice and pretty, beautiful splines. Not gonna spin as much, there's no oil in it, but wow. What a good looking turbo. Got a brand new gasket for this turbo oil return line. I'm gonna install that on the turbo. We got both the coolant lines, and then once that's installed, then of course the oil inlet on top. Turbo's installed, the oil line down there went in nicely. All the nuts are tight. This oil line has new crush washers here. Got the coolant lines on. Still gotta get this one on. That'll go to the aero separator, and then the reservoir pier will also go to the aero separator. But at least she's on. I'm gonna get these cleaned on top and then start putting the intake manifold on. I just put intake manifold gaskets on both sides after I just cleaned them with Scotch-Brite, made sure they're nice and clean, no debris on those. Remember that this AC compressor, the bracket is for the Legacy and not for this STI, so I gotta swap this out with the other one. Probably gonna bolt the power steering pump down, and then when you do, whenever you do an intake manifold swap onto another Subaru, make sure your coolant temp sensor is the same before you get the manifold on. I'm gonna go ahead and double check that right now. I currently have a triangle plug style, so I'll make sure the other one is the same. And then knock sensor is the only other thing that would really be swapped. Otherwise, the rest of all the sensors should be probably about the same for this. Just realized that I already swapped this coolant temp sensor over. Did that on a couple days ago, like a week ago. That's why I couldn't remember. Anyways, AC compressor's on. I get this power steering pump bolted on. And then I'm really hoping I get this intake manifold on next. I'm getting tired of how this thing looks right now. Taking longer than usual, but I got these side plugins in on both sides. Got the aero separator line here going in. The other one, I get to that valve cover. Gotta do PCV drains. I get the fuel lines on still, but she's going. All the bolts to the intake manifold on both sides are tight. All the wires are all plugged in. Next thing I'm gonna do is probably work on the external wastegate, and it's gonna suck because I have to kind of get above the engine and work down below it. This one is always hard to tell exactly because of the angle of going in there, but the bottom of the recirc's on. I got a new line on this blow-off valve. It's a better line that isn't so hard. Missing turbo heat shield. I'm gonna wait to make sure it's not leaking oil, and then I'm gonna go ahead and I took off the oil filter. I'm gonna put a new oil filter on. And the next thing is putting the oil in, and then I'm gonna crank it, make sure we build up good oil pressure, make sure we don't have any leaks, And then once that's good there and I have good oil pressure, then I'll put the radiator in. But she's almost there. This is the almost final product. Nice aero separator in the back. Nice intake. Looking good. All right, oil level is perfect. Crank sensor is unplugged. Make sure it's all the way up. There we go. Now we're gonna go ahead and crank this thing and get some more pressure built up and watch the gauge. Make sure this oil pressure starts building soon here. There we go. Oil pressure light is off. So we got good oil pressure now. Now we may be able to start it. Good. 60 psi oil pressure. Might have an injector unplugged, but great oil pressure. That's awesome to see. Burn off power steering fluid, but she sounds good. I have to clear codes. Still, it feels like a little bit of a miss, so I have to check that out. But oil pressure is holding good at about 40 psi, coming down to idle. So far, she's running good. AFRs look great. All right, cold start to end this video. Look at that idle. Oil pressure looking beautiful. Taking this thing for a little drive. Make sure she obviously does drive.